Hello, it's Warren Hewitt of Produce Like a Pro. Hope you're doing marvelously well. So this is part 3 in our Ableton series, and we're going back to talk to Alex Valente from Recording Connection. Alex is one of our apprentices here, and he's been fantastic because, frankly, growing up as a Pro Tools guy, well, actually a tape guy, no, to cassette guy. I started off with 2 cassette players, my parents' Sony Hi-Fi and my little Philips cassette player, and I'd play guitar onto my little Philips. I'd take that tape out, put it into my parents' Sony Hi-Fi with another cassette in the Philips, and then record over the top of that. It's just crazy. I mean, we'd do like 5 or 6 or 7 overdubs. Most of it was and hiss. That's how I got started at 15. Then after that, of course, I got a 4-track cassette. And then from a 4-track cassette, what was the next thing? Probably 8-track, but I never owned an 8-track. It was at a friend of mine's house. The next piece of recording equipment that I bought was actually ADATs in the early 90s. ADATs were pretty revolutionary for many of us, especially in England. If we were doing dance music in England, we would have like tons of synth modules all being triggered from a sequencer. Remember those days? Those of you that are old enough to remember triggering synthesizer modules from sequencers. So moving forward to Pro Tools, for me that was the first ever DAW that really allowed the guitar playing brain that I have to sort of feel like we could compete with great keyboard players. Because keyboard players could play, you could edit the MIDI, and then they could, trigger loads of sounds. And here we are with audio that was being printed into a DAW and then edited. So we're flashing forward to our Recording Connection student here, Alex Valente, and he's really good on Ableton. And I just discovered it a couple of weeks ago when I was working with Salam Remy. Those of you who don't know Salam, look him up. He's done Nas, the Fugees, Nelly Furtado, and obviously very famously did both Frank and Back to Black by Amy Winehouse. Mark Ronson, of course, did half of Back to Black as well, but it's between Salam Remy and Mark Ronson. The thing that I loved about Salam was he would just go into the live room and sit down at a piano and then just play jazz. And then he would sit behind a drum kit and play like an incredible drummer. Like Bernard Purdy, he just had really incredible feel. So I'm working with a guy that I really respect, who's a really incredible musician, as well as being a great producer. I'm doing rough mixes of the 5 Seconds to Summer stuff, and he loads it into his Ableton Live, and it starts triggering and creating MIDI information, picking up the melodies. It was insane how good it was. So that was my introduction just a few weeks ago. So I'm really glad that we got Alex Valente here. Like I said, he's from Recording Connection. He's been an apprentice now with us for a whopping 2 or 3 weeks. And we've been able to explore the software, the DAW, and I find it incredibly exciting. And then of course, talking to Chris Lake, who is a very successful DJ, producer, remixer, artist in his own right. Check out his new single, I Want You. It's I think it's at nearly 1 million views already after just 3 or 4 weeks. He's ridiculously talented and very humble and works stupidly fast using Ableton and just a pair of speakers. Actually, most of the time he says he's working on his laptop speakers. Pretty incredible. So it's a whole new world out there. I'm excited by it. So let's have Alex take over talking about the drum rack and the sampler.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is the second tutorial series. Today we're going to be talking about drum rack and sampler. Drum rack is basically a launch pad that you can drag sounds into and kind of draw them into MIDI. So you're going to need a MIDI track to do that. Again, it's Shift-Command-T for MIDI track because drum rack runs through a MIDI track. So it's going to be right on your drums on the left side in the categories, and then you're going to go to the drum rack, double click it, and it just links to MIDI. So right here, it looks like a launch pad, and it gives you all these keys and everything. So if I press it, you can see that on the left side. Basically what I use this for either sampling or for just making drums. So we're just gonna make a quick little drum beat right here so you guys can get a good idea. Shift-Command-M is to enter a MIDI clip, Command-L to loop. So whenever you wanna just get drums, go into your sample packs, drag in some samples. You could literally just drag it, and if you have a keyboard, say I want my hi-hat on this one, all you have to do is just drag it, and then that's your key. I usually have mine up here. So yeah, it's just a simple click and drag. So when you click on the MIDI clip, it brings you to this. Drum rack usually does a fold, which means it shows you every single rack or square in the drum rack that you've chosen. So if I unfold it, it just shows a key, and then you have to find it in the launchpad keys. Keep this fold. I usually turn this on so I can hear the drums that I picked. Click B to use your draw tool. This is a good use for draw tool as well. So basic, you know, like trap music, snare hits on 3. Add some hi-hats. So yeah, you get the picture. So what we have over here in this main page for the drum rack, you can edit all your sounds. So say, you know, the snare right here, just all this, you can change the loop length. So it only goes to there. You can take this, drag it back, shorten the clip, change the starting time, release, sustain, volume. And you can also transpose your track just by clicking and dragging down on this. So yeah, drum rack is pretty useful. It's definitely a very easy way to make a drum loop, or, you know, start a project or something, just adding drums. It's very useful. Right here, if you click on this little button right here, it brings you to this chain. So this is the volume and the panning. So usually you can pan from here. So say, you know, usually hip hop, sometimes the producer will pan their hi-hats. So if you wanted to do that, you could just click this C, and then on your MIDI clip, the mixer, this is the chain, the panorama, which means pan. And then you just have to make sure that you click the one you want panned. So then you can just draw it in however you want. Another thing useful for drum rack is, say that I have this snare and I took some sustain off and I shortened it and I transpose it down. I really like that snare. So right here you can save this. This is the save preset button, so once you click that, it's going to take you to your presets and your user library, and then it's going to take you to the drum rack. It has its own folder, and then you can save it as whatever you want to call it. If you want to change the name, Command R, how to change the name. Another thing, I'm talking about this button right here. If you were lost or if you wanted to just re-find it, so it's like the normal preset, you can hit this button right here. It'll take you to exactly where the preset is found. So it'll take you to your drum rack. If you have like layers of, if you have a bunch of snares in there and you want to just switch it out, you know, you could always do that. It's also this button right here on the actual pad. You click that and then you can switch it in. So I want this snare now, so double click that. It's going to change it to that snare. It's a really useful thing just for switching out drums. It's pretty easy to get a good drum beat going. Just build your workflow. On the pads, mute. So there's no snare because I muted it. This is just to play it. And then right here is the solo button. So you're only going to hear the one you solo. And if you get lost and scroll, just keep scrolling. You can fill up the drum rack as much as you want, which is pretty convenient. So when you go to this mode, right here, this little envelope, you can click and you can choose, you know, kind of like an effect you wanted to do on it. And you can change volume through here. When you're making beats in the drum rack, you're going to want to switch between like 8th notes and 16th notes per se. So how to do that, you're just going to want to right click on the middle of the screen. So you're going to get this fixed grid down here. It's 1/4 notes, 1/8 notes, 1/16 notes. So say I want 1/16 notes, then the whole grid changes. So you can just draw it in accordingly. If you want triplets, you'll know because these will be checked off. So these are triplets now. And then wide setting, wider view of the grid. Widest is really wide. Medium, just a whole bunch of grid settings. Again, the velocities down here. You can draw your velocity in, or you could do it the old-fashioned way, one by one. If you wanted to do some grooves to your hi-hats, you know, just one after the other, add a little swing to them. Cool little thing to know. Moving on to sampler. Sampler is a Ableton instrument you can use, great for sampling. I use it a lot for basses. So basically, what it is you just load a audio wave into sampler and you can play it on your keyboard. It just goes up pitches and everything, so pretty useful for that. Runs through MIDI, so Shift Command T for a new MIDI track, and then you're gonna go to the left on the categories, instruments, sampler, double click or drag, and this little thing comes up, this sampler comes up. So as you can see, it says drop sample here. So I'm just gonna give you guys an example. Yeah, just get any audio, and you know it's audio if it has this little symbol on it, and if not, it'll have a little kind of box thing. That means it's a preset. So don't try to, I mean, you can load those in there, but they're already loaded. So yeah, just click it and drag it into sampler, and then you have your sound right here. You know, on the track, you can play it going up the keyboard. So down here, you can reverse the sample. So just click it on, and then it plays from right to left instead of left to right. So hitting the button. Again, just like the drum rack, just kind of drag it to chop it off, you know, starting point over here. Messing with the sustain, telling you where the cutoff will be. This is a loop start, loop end, so this is just looping it, so if you play it, just goes back and forth. So crossfading is just kind of, if you have like a sample imported and it has like a click in it at the beginning, or it sounds really bad, use crossfade to kind of get rid of that, try to clear it up. This detune I use a lot for basses, because some of the basses that you upload or you get in sample packs, when you load them in the sampler, they're not going to be middle C. So in order to change that, you can use detune, or you can also take you to this window right here, which is the pitch and oscillator window. So you click on that, you get this spread right here, and then over here you got the transpose, you can transpose it. Glide, I use this a lot for basses. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that with a bass real quick. So, okay, so again, instruments, sampler. Okay, so I can, you know, play bass now. So if you wanted to glide it, go to that pitch and oscillator envelope that I was talking to you about. You can transpose it up, so hitting the same note. Just click it, drag up and down, down for lower, drag up for higher. Detuning. If you click up or down, depending on your sample. So glide right down here. I use this decent amount for basses. So you just want to hit that glide off, and then that time is where how much it's going to glide. So in order to make the glide, you have to overlap your notes. So you have to hit a note, and then right after the note that you hit, that's the higher note, it will glide up to that. So quick little thing. So see how these are overlapping right here? That is how the bass gets glided. If I don't, it just goes right to it. But if you overlap, that's your glide. So if you go over here, you can, you know, change the timing of it if you don't If you don't want it to be super glidey, you know, you can just give it a little bit of a... Yeah, it's like not even gliding now because I have it so low, but yeah, the higher you get, the more it'll glide. So this is on 100. So basically that means the time, the longer it takes for the sample to glide. So if you want it to have like a good tone, you'll probably keep it a little more than halfway. That's usually what sounds pretty cool. Also in this envelope, the pitch oscillator envelope, you have these oscillators and envelopes. So if you click those on, you can mess with the attack. You can mess with the sustain, you can mess with, you know, on these envelopes right here. Right here in this modulation window, just more oscillators and LFO kind of, you know, you can add more like wubs to your bass, or you can also automate all these effects on here as well. Also another cool thing, if you wanted to turn your MIDI into an audio track just for, you know, purposes of editing or chop it up better, yeah, just kind of do what you like. But to get MIDI to audio is you have to right click on this track and then you go down here to freeze track. And so what freeze track basically does is it just makes it so like you can't add anything else to the track. It's like it's frozen, so it's staying how it is. Then right click again and you hit flatten, and there you have your MIDI turned into audio, and it automatically renders the whole track and turns it into a audio track. So then when you click on audio, it gives you a bunch of options to mess with it here. You know, you can change the color of this option right here, change the time signature. You can put groove on it. So all you have to do is hit those, and they give you these swings and grooves. So, you know, you can throw just kind of like a little groove on it. It gives you these little kind of things you can just throw in there, and then you just hit commit when you want to change it. Ableton is very good for doing a lot of bending in audio. This whole section right here is just really fast and lets you do a lot with audio. So transpose it down. You can transpose it however you want. This right here makes the wave bigger. Right here above that is the reverse button, so just click that, reverse the audio. Click it again, reverses back. This warp mode right here is very good for sampling. You're gonna have warp markers. So say right here, I played this not on time. So say if it was right here. So it's not on time. So in order to make it on time, you just double click right here where it has that marker, or you can just click anywhere to make a marker, and then just click it again and just drag it to wherever you want, to wherever it makes it on time. So yeah, not on time. And make sure you do like a little clip before, because if you don't, then if you drag this, it's gonna drag the whole thing. But if you add a little clip, it's just gonna move from the right of that clip or left, depending on where you put your marker. Some kind of more advanced stuff, transposing kind of effects or anything like that. You can go down here, repitch texture tones, beats, go down to Complex Pro, and then this envelope by clicking the E, click down, and then you can do flux modulation, gain size modulation, sample offset modulation. So basically what that does is when you click it, it gives you the audio, and it gives you another automation option right here. So when you want to do that, you just literally click it, or again, draw mode. You can draw your automation, and then it makes it sound however you want. So you can just transpose it. Ableton's very flexible with how you can manipulate audio, so definitely very cool. Hope you guys learned a lot from this. Thanks for watching.
I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you had a marvellous time watching. Please have a marvellous time recording and mixing. of course, as ever, leave some comments and questions below. We've got Alex engaged on the first video. I'll get him engaged on this one. If you've got any specific questions to ask him, either about Ableton or Recording Connection, please do. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing.
So like, you know how you were at that one